Yes guys, welcome to episode 2 of Asian One-to-One Football Coaching. I am Coach Indy, and on today's episode we are going to be talking about a game from the 1920 Premier League season between Manchester United and Chelsea, in which Manchester United ran out 4-0 victors. But before we get stuck into that, I need you to hit the subscribe button, like the video, and then at the end leave a comment saying what you liked about the video and maybe what you want to see more of on the channel. Now, with all of our analysis and tactics board sessions, I don't just like to talk about the game in isolation. I like to give it some layers and some context to maybe some of the decisions that possibly Frank Lampard or Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had made going into this game. So the first thing we need to do is cast our minds back to December of 2018. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been made caretaker manager. Now he goes on a really strong run in the league and the FA Cup and the Champions League, climbing back loads of points on teams above them, not necessarily climbing league positions but definitely points on the teams above. And also on the back of that, they had a heroic victory in the last 16 against PSG away from home, and that effectively got him the position as permanent manager. And that was roughly about mid-March time in last season. Now on the back of that, United's form massively dipped, and the identity of the team dipped, and the personnel available dipped as well. So United lacked an idea of how to play and how to break teams down. So it was a big summer for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and he went for a different type of personnel and players who looked like they wanted to play for the manager. The three signings he made were Daniel James, a young winger, exciting winger from Swansea, very quick. Then we had Aaron Wan-Bissaka, a very strong right back, especially in the defensive department. And then Harry Maguire, who played plenty of games for Hull and Leicester City in the Premier League, and also is a regular in the England setup. So he's brought in three players, and the big thing to mention from Solskjaer going forward at this point is that he said in a lot of his press conferences going forward in the summer, so the summer just gone, that he wanted his team to be the most hard-working team in the league. He wanted them to create loads of chances, to score loads of goals, to keep clean sheets, and have a bit of an identity, play the Manchester United way. And at this point I think it's appropriate to mention that on pre-season, Manchester United played 6 games, they won 5 and they drew 1 and they lost 0. So really strong form in pre-season. I know a few people will mention the form in terms of results is not sort of the most important thing in pre-season, but it's certainly a good habit to create going forward for the season ahead. It's all about getting your match sharpness, your match fitness, creating partnerships on the pitch and building some team chemistry and morale on the pre-season tour. So that was Manchester United's sort of bit of context going into this season. Frank Lampard, on the other hand, he has only had 1 year of experience at managerial level, which was with Derby this season before in the Championship, and he did quite well. He got them to the playoff final, just unfortunately lost to Aston Villa, but nevertheless did quite a good job under a small budget with a lot of young players, especially loanees. And then he eventually got the job for Chelsea this summer because Chelsea decided to depart with Sarri. A couple of other key things to mention is Chelsea had sold their best player for the last 3 or 4 years in Eden Hazard. He's gone to Real Madrid, so they've lost the X-factor player, the one that can win them the games in the tight games, the big games possibly. They've also got a transfer ban as well, so they weren't able to sign. Sorry, let me just say this correctly. They weren't able to register new players. So it's key for me to say that because 2 new players did actually come through the door. But the first one to mention, Kovacic, he was on loan from Real Madrid from the January before, so he was technically registered as a Chelsea player, so they agreed to sign a player, but he was a registered player already, which is okay to do during a transfer embargo. And then the other one to mention is they actually signed Pulisic in the January before as well, but never actually joined until the summer. So they did have 2 new players officially on their books, if you like, but the key thing to remember is registered players. And on top of that, Chelsea gave an opportunity to a lot of young players. So in this game, I'll come to the lineups in more detail in a moment, but they started with Abraham, a young player, Mount, a young player, and there's various other players as well in amongst the squad as well who are around it as well. But also, Chelsea and Frank Lampard and Jody Morris have had to implement a philosophy going forward, the way, a brand they want to play, which we'll get stuck into a bit more, but that's what I'm trying to say is here Chelsea are not as far down their journey as what Manchester United are. So in that sense, you could argue Manchester United have the advantage already because Solskjaer's had 8 months in the job already. That leads me nicely to the lineup. So we'll start with Manchester United first. Start with David De Gea in goal. Debut for Aaron Wan-Bissaka at right back. Victor Lindelof as right centre half. Harry Maguire, another debut for Manchester United. He played left centre half. And then Luke Shaw. Played with a double pivot with Scott McTominay and Paul Pogba. On the right hand side we started with Jesse Lingard. On the left hand side we had Marcus Rashford. At number 10, which was an interesting decision but probably a justified decision, bearing in mind the pre-season he had and the signs he was showing, but that was Andres Pereira. And then up front was Anthony Martial. So straight away you could probably argue at that moment there that's probably Manchester United's strongest available lineup, and probably their strongest lineup in a lot of people's eyes, in the way that Solskjaer wants his team to play. A lot of mobility, a lot of energy in the advanced areas, strong at the back. Some people might argue Juan Mata could come in for Pereira, but he is less mobile, he's less energetic, and he probably doesn't suit the way that the team, Solskjaer wants his team to play. If you switch it to Chelsea, they started with Kepa in goal, Azpilicueta right back, Zuma, Christensen, and then Emerson. Started with a double pivot in here as well with Jorginho and Kovacic. On the right hand side they started with Pedro, number 10 Mason Mount. Ross Barkley on the left hand side played a little bit more narrow than sort of touching the whites out here, and then they started with Tammy Abraham up front. So with Chelsea, they're probably missing certainly 2 key players. Normally N'Golo Kante would come in probably for one of these two, Jorginho or Kovacic, or they might thicken it up and lose Mount and then play 3 in here. So he's one key player, massive player actually. I can't emphasise that enough. He's won the Premier League multiple times in the last few years, last 3 or 4 years should I say, and he's also obviously won the World Cup as well, and he's been key for France as well. And then the other player you've got that's missing is Rudiger. Now he is Chelsea's best centre half, and he was missing as well. So you can argue there's a lack of experience in Chelsea's defence, certainly, especially with a young goalkeeper as well. And you're missing the engine, the battery in midfield as well with N'Golo Kante. And then on top of that, you can argue maybe Willian could be playing and possibly Emerson. But there's not much difference between Willian and Pedro, and then also Emerson and Alonso, you could argue. So that gives a bit of context in terms of the form and the personnel available and what both teams went for. Now to the game itself. So the first key moment that we're going to talk about is in the 18th minute when Manchester United won a penalty. The penalty was won by Marcus Rashford. Kurt Zouma bringing him down. Probably a bit of a clumsy decision, and this is where the experience of maybe a Rudiger would have helped, or maybe in a David Luiz in the past with Chelsea would have helped as well. So how it's kind of all worked out, Chelsea are really advanced. Just move a few of these personnel forward. Up there. Sort of in this position here. And Manchester United are in this position here. It's really interesting. So the ball's on the right hand side, and this was quite a big theme actually throughout the game. So Manchester United had plenty of counters, and again I will come to that a bit more as the session's going on. But the first goal comes from a bit of an error from Azpilicueta and Pedro on the right hand side. The ball actually ricochets to Martial, and he picks the ball up just bang on, pretty much on the halfway line. The first thing to note there is the ball, where the ball is now, you've got, I think Emerson was actually in line with the ball, and then these two are advanced, and so was Azpilicueta. So straight away there's actually only 3 players, 1, 2, 3, behind the ball for Chelsea. Now the transition's happening. So straight away, this is a scenario that Manchester United probably wanted, and we're going to get quite frequently, because of the way Man United wanted to play and the way that Chelsea played as well. So from here, Martial gets the ball, and Pereira actually makes a run here. The ball gets intercepted semi-intercepted from Jorginho. Rashford's made that run down there. Lingard's made an out-to-in run in here. He's actually picked up the ball because the ball ricochets and lands to Jesse Lingard. But when this incident happens, when the ball's been made to Pereira, actually Jorginho fouls him. And it's actually worth mentioning at this point, a really, really brilliant bit of refereeing from Anthony Taylor during the game. Because a lot of referees at that point would have given the free kick. He's actually waved play on. The ball sort of landed to Lingard, and Rashford's making that run on the outside channel. Ball hits off Lingard, comes into Rashford, and the game's obviously, people are retreating back, etc. They get inside the box. Rashford checks onto his right hand side, and that's where the trailing leg of Zuma, or it's not really a trailing leg, he actually sticks it out and then commits a foul, and that's the penalty. So it gives Manchester United the opportunity after 18 minutes to go 1-0 up, and he dispatches it 1-0 to Manchester United. Now Chelsea did have a few opportunities before that, nothing worth sort of stretching David De Gea to a big save. It was all a lot of routine, but they were saves nevertheless, and that was the first opportunity Manchester United had, which was from the penalty spot. So that's, after 18 minutes, United have taken the lead, and that works perfectly for their game plan going forward, because they obviously want to dominate possession, but if they can't, they've definitely got the personnel in Rashford, Lingard, Pereira and Martial to hit on the counter, and they've got lightning pace and energy going forward. And also you can add Luke Shaw and Wan-Bissaka and even McTominay and Pogba to a certain extent to join in as well. So that was 1-0. After that, the game didn't really materialise into like goal fest or anything like that. It just had Chelsea dominating possession and Manchester United looking for them counter-attacking opportunities. Chelsea did have 53.4% of possession during the game, which for away from home as an away team under a brand new manager, it was a promising sign for Chelsea and Frank Lampard's side. Against a big team as well like Manchester United, it's a good thing to do. It's definitely a promising thing. So they've had 53.4 possession of the ball, and they made 523 passes as well. So that's just a bit of an indication of how Chelsea going forward are going to play. So between minutes 18 and 64, Chelsea actually have the better of the chances. They have two chances between. So Emerson has two chances, hits the crossbar, and then has another shot which David De Gea saves. And Mason Mount has an opportunity, which is a fairly routine chance for David De Gea to save. And then Tammy Abraham incidentally hit the post in the first 5 minutes, I think it was. And then probably the best chance they had was Ross Barkley in the inside left position. So it was actually a counter-attack from Chelsea, actually. So it was a counter-attack from Chelsea. And the ball sort of just moved these players' personnel back. Chelsea moved up the pitch. Man United actually caught out. Pedro actually gets the ball in the inside right position, just in here. And Barkley's over here. I don't think Mount's not in the frame, he's slightly behind the ball. Man United actually caught in this position here. And Pedro makes a decent ball into Barkley, into here. Lindelof has to overcover. And Barkley goes into this position. Lindelof comes across, tries to show him his left side, and he does. Gets inside the box. David Hayes' goal. Strike's been made. It's a foot save from De Gea. A very, very decent save, I must add. It wasn't a routine save, but David De Gea is arguably the best at making foot saves in the Premier League. So that was probably their best chance that Chelsea had in the first half. Going into the second half, the theme continued. Chelsea dominated the possession of the football. They created a number of chances. They actually created 18 chances in the game, and actually, incidentally, 8 of them actually came from eight of the chances created came from the fullbacks, and which was another thing of Chelsea. They were looking for these overloads all the time. Rashford couldn't get back with Azpilicueta because he's thinking about going this way as opposed to that way. Wan-Bissaka's up here. But yeah, they're very much looking for dominate possession between Kovacic and here. Looking to dominate possession between these two, Kovacic and Jorginho, and looking for Mount to sort of get inside the pockets. But also they really committed these wide plays over here. Allows Pedro to play inside the pockets in here, and Barkley was naturally going to do that anyway. So that, yeah, so 8 chances came from these two creating throughout the game. 8 of their 18 chances, just under 15% of their chances came from their fullbacks. So that was another promising sign for Chelsea. You could maybe argue a bit of naivety in the game plan from Lampard and Morris, or even the personnel on the pitch may have decided that. I don't think that would have happened. I think that message would have come from the manager, but that was a sign and probably a way that Chelsea were going to play going forward. So fast forwarding to minute 63, and Manchester United, again, I was touching on the counter-attacks. Manchester United actually scored all 4 goals on their counter-attacks. Goal number 2, that came from Martial. Harry Maguire, Chelsea actually had the ball. And again, they're in these sort of positions again. Manchester United are in this position here, Chelsea are in these positions here. Ball gets rolled into Tammy Abraham, and actually he's looking to roll Harry Maguire in this position here. But Harry Maguire is such a big lad, he's got a big frame to him. He just holds him, and eventually Abraham just falls over, and then Harry Maguire actually steps in and just collects the ball. So he steps in, collects the ball, passes the ball into Scott McTominay, and then McTominay plays the ball into Marcus Rashford. And this is where the counter-attack happens again. So players are flooding forward. Ball comes into Rashford in here. Pogba's looking to advance as well. And here, Rashford goes in a sort of diagonal run with the ball in here. These players are trying to retreat back. Obviously, it's very difficult for Azpilicueta in particular and the 2 older midfielders, because they're not as quick as these mobile and quick players in advanced areas for Manchester United. So anyway, he makes a run in there. Martial's sort of making a run actually around the outside, just sort of overlaid in there. Pereira's in here. Jesse Lingard actually makes a run over here. He looks to slide a ball into Lingard's path, actually forcing him a little bit wide. Game continues. Azpilicueta is absolutely sprinting back. It's really important to mention this actually at this stage. He is absolutely sprinting back. He's trying to make that recovery run back in to try and help his team out, which everyone should be doing, but it's really, really important to note him at this stage, because I'll come to that in a moment. Anyway, the ball's forced a little bit too wide for Jesse Lingard, and eventually he gets the ball to Pereira, who's looking to make a run to help out the team. Just move everyone else a bit more advanced in these positions, because the game would have obviously moved. So he sets the ball back to Pereira. At this stage here, Emerson tries to close him down. He fakes to cross the ball, gets out wide, and this is where Azpilicueta tries to get back in. So he's actually inside Martial at the moment, and he doesn't actually scan his shoulder at the right time. So what happens is Pereira gets out wide, he crosses the ball in, but before the cross is about to be made, he scans his shoulder, he opens up to look, and he doesn't see Martial, because Martial's in this position. As the ball's coming in, they actually switch, and Martial gets in front of him like that and gets a goal at the sort of Pomo position of maximum opportunity in sort of the front post and middle of the goal area. And that's 2-0. And that's really, really interesting as well to see from Azpilicueta, who's always been, certainly the last 3, 4, 5 years since he's sort of broken into the team and been a regular, his defending has been outstanding, especially in 1v1 situations, especially when defending his far post, and his positional play as well. But there, because he's had to make such a long busting run, and this is where you make bad decisions. When you're tired, you're more likely to make the bad decisions, and I think what's happened there, because he's had to make a 50-60 yard sprint back, he's just scanned and not realised where Martial was, and then Martial's just made that inside or outside to in run to the front post and scored and made it 2-0. So at that point there, 2-0, 65 minutes gone roughly, and it's a long way back for Chelsea. Game materialised. Chelsea actually take kick-off. I'll just move through these personnel back, and we'll just set it up. So just in here, United, set roughly like this. 7 and 11. 8 and 4, 11, something like that. Ball over here. So anyway, the ball gets broken down through Chelsea players. Azpilicueta has gone advanced like he's been told to do. So Emerson as well. Jorginho and Kovacic are looking to dominate possession as the game plan would have been for Chelsea, and turns out there was their game plan going forward and the brand of football they want to play going forward. But anyway, the ball gets broken down. Wan-Bissaka gets the ball, pops it into Jesse Lingard, and here he sets Pogba. At this stage here, as soon as Pogba's getting the ball, Rashford's actually making a really strong run from outside to inside Azpilicueta and outside of Kurt Zouma. Pogba plays a lovely drifted ball over the top, and he takes the ball just on the outside of the box and slots it into the bottom corner on the left hand side of Kepa. 3-0, 67 minutes gone. It was 2 minutes difference between goal 2 and goal 3. If the game wasn't done now, the game is certainly done at 3-0. So if the game wasn't done at 2-0, it's certainly done at 3-0. And at this point here, Chelsea probably still, because they want to stick to their principles and they want to impose themselves on the game, which is absolutely fine, no problem at all. But I think they showed a bit of naivety in the way they continue to have these players in advanced areas and leaving huge amounts of spaces for the likes of Martial, Rashford, Lingard, Pereira, Dan James when he came on to exploit, because that's what they're looking for: counter-attack, space in behind, threaten the space in behind, and that's where incidentally goal 4 came from. So I just mentioned Dan James. He come on sub with about 10-12 minutes to go. Fourth goal comes from actually a Chelsea corner. So we just move some of these personnel back into here, roughly where United's put set up. There'll be a lot of bodies in here. And we'll go for this player in here. Something like that, Chelsea would have been. Corner piece taken from there. Anyway, gets swung in, gets to the far post, and United clear it. Gets cleared from, I think, Scott McTominay or Harry Maguire, I think it was. Yeah, Harry Maguire. Goes to Scott McTominay. He plays a soft ball out wide to Scott McTominay, sorry, that one there. Plays a soft ball out to Pogba out wide. And the ball goes out to Pogba out wide. He sees Martial make that run down the line. He slides it down the line. Continues his run in here, plays effectively a 1-2. And Pogba gets the ball back and he drives into this space in here with the ball. Chelsea are trying to retreat back, understandably. United are trying to just clear, trying to sort of get out of their defensive box and try to sort of get some sort of shape. Pogba goes into these positions here. They've got players sort of sprinting back and trying to stop Pogba from going through and goal. Dan James at this point here has come fresh as a substitution. Pogba can't exploit the space. He eats up the yards with his long strides, but he's not really quick, and there's actually given opportunity for players to get back. But Dan James makes a strong advancing run here to sort of join him with a counter as well. Pogba eventually plays a ball into Dan James, forces him a bit wide. That allows Dan James to go a little bit wide and Emerson to get back in. Gets the ball on the angle. He actually hesitates to shoot the first time, Dan James, but eventually he does strike, and he takes a little deflection off Emerson. The ball actually goes into the far corner and is actually a little bit unlucky on Kepa's behalf, because it actually loses right arm and goes over his arm into the bottom corner. That's 4-0. It's a game, set and match. 3 points for Manchester United, and a very satisfying 3 points for Manchester United as well. To conclude, from both teams, I think Manchester United would, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would be absolutely thrilled with a 4-0 victory. They would not have imagined that before the game. Nevertheless, 4-0 victory, it helps with confidence, with multiple scorers, and a lot more belief, I suppose, going into the season as well. With Chelsea, they looking for possession as king. I think that's a thing they were looking for. That was very evident to see with Kovacic and Jorginho. They manipulate the ball really well in tight spaces, and obviously with the fullbacks trying to join in and create overloads in wide areas, that was also another theme as well. So I think Chelsea will continue to play like that. I think they showed some naivety in the way they played away from home against such a big opposition, and you could argue that's they almost deserved a 4-0 defeat. Sorry, but the signs are there for Frank Lampard. I think they'll come back fighting. Yeah, it'd be really, really interesting to see how Chelsea do for the rest of the season. Guys, that's episode 2 done on Asian one-to-one football coaching. I'm Coach Indy. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.